evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Wynna Wong. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. Inbound tour groups will soon enjoy greater freedoms when roaming the city's attractions. The High Court upholds the conviction of former RTHK journalist Bao Choy regarding car plate searches. And led by Donald Trump, Republicans get ready to win back the House in the U.S. midterm elections. In another step to reopen Hong Kong to the world, tourists who arrive in group tours will not need to observe COVID rules when visiting attractions and dining out. They can go to a list of venues, including the M+ Museum and Che Kung Temple, which are otherwise barred for people on their first 3 days of arrival. Details are being discussed with travel agencies, and the arrangement could be implemented this month. Catering sector lawmaker Tommy Cheung welcomed the move and brushed aside COVID fears, as he expects travelers will be seated separately from local customers. The Travel Industry Council estimates less than 100 tour group travelers from Southeast Asia will arrive daily in the initial phase.
We won't expect a lot of tourists in the beginning of this relaxation, but I think it is a very important positive sign to the world that Hong Kong is back. Not only the tourists and even our trade partners, overseas trade partners. So when they plan for the next trip, put Hong Kong as their priority destination.
The High Court has upheld the guilty verdict of former RTHK producer who was ruled to have incorrectly accessed the vehicle registry. Bao Choy remains the only person to be convicted of what used to be common practice in investigative journalism. Janice Lowe reports.
Former RTHK journalist Bao Choy was found guilty and fined $6,000 last year for wrongly accessing the government vehicle registry while producing a documentary on the Yuen Long mob attack. She filed an appeal on the conviction, and a written judgment was handed down today. High Court Judge Alex Lee said the case hinges on the purpose of the registry search. According to the Transport Department, such applications should be related to transport-related legal proceedings, sale and purchase of vehicles, or traffic and transport-related matters. Choy, however, conducted the search for reporting purpose instead. He agreed with the lower court that Choy carried a good intention, but emphasized that it is not a justifiable cause. Lee added if journalists or other industries wish to access vehicle registration records, they must seek a public consultation to amend the law. The journalist expressed disappointment to the ruling.
Honestly speaking, I would be very disappointed with today's written verdicts and the judgment. And I think it's a decision that really hinders the access to free information in the city, which means that will create obstacles for the press to act as a brake on the abuse of power and to monitor and hold the powerful accountable.
The veteran journalist will now discuss with her lawyers before deciding whether to launch one last challenge at the Court of Final Appeal. Janice Lowe, HKIBC.
Kwok Chuk-in, better known as the King of Judicial Reviews, has launched his third legal challenge in 4 weeks, this time over the justification of keeping the vaccine pass and the Leave Home Safe app. The Cheung Chau resident noted under the Prevention and Control of Disease Ordinance, such measures are implemented to guard against the outbreak of a disease. But Kwok argued the reason is no longer valid, as COVID has been detected in Hong Kong for over 2 years now and should be considered a pandemic. He added that the measures have caused economic damage, which in turn affects people's mental and physical well-being. In the U.S., the midterm elections are just around the corner, and candidates are running the final sprint of their campaigns. With the Republicans set to make sweeping gains, former President Donald Trump continues to tease a possible comeback for a second term in the White House. The pressure is on for next term's House and Senate hopefuls as Tuesday's midterm election looms. This will be the first major voting exercise since the riot in Capitol Hill over a year ago, and it comes at a time of heavy inflation, economic turmoil, and reproductive rights controversies, while a war rages on in Eastern Europe. Speaking at a campaign for New York Governor Kathy Hochul, President Joe Biden made sure to play into these issues.
You saw what happened last time under my predecessor. The economy left it in ruins. He's the first president in America since Herbert Hoover to lose more jobs than he had when he came to office. The Republicans gained control of Congress and passed a nationwide ban on abortion. I will veto it. And if you give me 2 more Democrats in the Senate, and we keep control of the House, we're going to codify Roe v. Wade in January and make it the law of the land.
A president's party typically suffers in the midterms, and experts believe it won't be any different this time round. The Republicans are poised to make enough gains to take back both the House and Senate. That's music to former President Donald Trump's ears, who is expected to take the upcoming results as a cue on whether to run again in 2024.
In order to make our country successful, safe, and glorious, I will probably have to do it again, but stay tuned.
Balloting results are not expected to be finalized until the end of the week. The first batch of asylum seekers who've been stranded off the coast of Italy were finally given permission to land. This episode is being seen as a first test of immigration policies for the country's new far-right government. Azam Khan has the details.
Cheers erupted as the Norway-flagged Geo Barents, a distressed rescue ship carrying 572 migrants, was finally allowed to dock in the Italian port city of Catania on the coast of Sicily. But while some were able to land, many waited desperately on board for authorization to disembark. They remained stranded, along with hundreds of others on 2 other ships, which were told to stay at sea by the Italian government. The charity vessel said the rescued migrants are sleeping on the floor, spreading infections, while food supplies ran low. The new Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, has promised to crack down on migrants traveling across the Mediterranean. Only those sick or deemed vulnerable are allowed to disembark for treatment. However, the charity group said everyone on board is vulnerable, as they have been rescued from the sea and are legally required to be processed on land. In tweets posted later on Sunday, SOS Humanity said it would launch legal action against the Italian authorities, claiming their actions violated European law and the Geneva Refugee Convention. Italy is one of the main entry points for distressed vessels crossing from North Africa to Europe. According to the United Nations, 85,000 migrants have arrived in Italy by boat since the start of the year. Azam Khan, HKIBC.
Both China's imports and exports contracted unexpectedly in October, in yet another sign that the world's second largest economy is losing momentum. An economist believes the situation will remain bleak in the short term. Chloe Fong reports.
For the first time in 2.5 years, China recorded negative growth in both imports and exports. According to customs data, exports declined by 0.3% year-on-year last month to $298 billion, a sharp contrast compared with the 5.7% growth in September. Imports also fell 0.7% to $213 billion, down from a 0.3% growth the previous month.
The weak export figure shows how much slower the global economy is at this point due to the interest rate hike in major Western economies. And we have seen that especially in the European and American market, the consumer demand has declined significantly. And that has posed a great pressure to China's exports.
Amid the bleak outlook, China still recorded a trade surplus of $85 billion, more or less the same as September. Wang believes weakening exports is only part of the country's problems.
The weak trade figure in China doesn't just reflect a weak demand from overseas, but a rather weak domestic market within China. And that would weigh down the recovery prospect for the world in 2023, because China's demand for commodities has been a driving force for many countries' exports.
The immediate priorities for the government, she said, are stabilizing the housing market and containing the COVID outbreak. Chloe Fong, HKIBC.
Hong Kong stocks continued their upward trend on the first trading day of the week amid speculation that China could ease COVID curbs. The Hang Seng Index closed 2.7% higher. Tech stocks led the rally, with Tencent gaining 2.9% and mainland e-commerce platform JD.com up 3.1%. Hardware and precision lens manufacturer Sunny Optical was one of the best performers, surging 11%. Despite the recent rate hike, HSBC was up 3.7%, as it promised to help in the city's economic recovery. The Good Business Day contributed to bourse operator Hong Kong Exchange's 5.4% jump. A look at the markets now. The Hang Seng Index closed up 434 points. Top 10 active stocks: Tencent was up $6.80, Alibaba down 20 cents. Wuxi Bio up $3.65, BYD Company up $1.50. In exchange rates, the euro is at 7.83, British pound 8.98. And in foreign markets, the UK FTSE is down 7 points. Apple is scaling down its production target for the latest iPhone 14. According to Bloomberg, the tech giant is now aiming to produce 87 million units of the latest range of devices, which is 3 million fewer than its original target. The company blamed COVID restrictions in China for the disruptions, saying its assembly plant in Zhengzhou is now operating at significantly reduced capacity. Workers were seen fleeing the facility last week, following reports that thousands were sent to quarantine to contain a COVID outbreak. On to the weather now. It will be cloudy with occasional showers. Temperatures will range between 21 and 24 degrees, mostly fine in the following few days. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. And that's our main news for Monday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Wynna Wong. Thanks for watching. Good night.